Caitlin Clark's rise should have been a celebration. A rare moment when the WNBA broke through into mainstream attention and captured a national audience. Yet, in a stunning twist, a panel of commentators on the streaming show Playback turned that success into a spectacle of hostility. Their on-air attacks went beyond basketball, taking aim at Clark's abilities, her fan base, and even her character. The irony couldn't be sharper. The same media voices that once lamented the league's lack of relevance are now tearing down the very player who helped make it matter again. And in doing so,
if you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
They've sparked a broader conversation, one about resentment, race, and the fragile politics of progress in women's sports. What this moment exposes is a deeper divide threatening the league's growth. The criticism of Clark reveals how internal bitterness and racial tension can derail unity just as women's basketball begins to thrive. Instead of rallying around a shared success story, parts of the media seem intent on reigniting old rivalries and questioning who deserves the spotlight. Clark's respectful demeanor and consistent professionalism stand in stark contrast to the venom directed her way, proof that she's weathering hostility with composure. The WNBA's challenge now is not just on the court, but in preserving solidarity off it. Learning to celebrate all talent, elevate black players through fair representation, and reject divisive narratives that undermine its own progress. The WNBA just hit one of its biggest moments ever, and parts of its own media base are already working to tear it down. During a recent broadcast on Playback, a panel of commentators launched into a shockingly personal and aggressive takedown of Caitlin Clark. Her skills, her impact, her fan base, nothing was off limits. And these weren't just critiques about performance or style of play. These were outright attacks, veiled in hostility, that quickly veered into resentment. The timing couldn't be more questionable. Clark's arrival has fueled the most successful season the WNBA has ever seen. Not in recent memory. Ever. Ticket sales, jersey numbers, TV ratings, digital engagement. It's all up. And at the center of that rise is one player. But instead of celebrating the visibility she's brought to the league, some voices are turning the spotlight into a weapon. Let's be real. This backlash didn't come out of nowhere. There's been a growing undercurrent of resentment building ever since Clark's popularity skyrocketed. Some of it comes from fans who feel she's getting too much attention. Some of it comes from media members who were covering the league long before the numbers started rising. But now that the league finally has its moment in the sun, a handful of voices seem to be actively working to shut the blinds. And for what? That Playback stream wasn't just a casual hot take. It was targeted, personal, and it was laced with a tone that felt less like critique and more like contempt. The issue wasn't disagreement over her playing style or statistics. It was a hostility, the energy behind the words, and the complete dismissal of what she's brought to the league. Let's talk about the hypocrisy. For years, people begged for the WNBA to grow. They asked why more fans didn't watch, why coverage was so limited, why revenue wasn't higher. And now that a player has arrived who brings in massive mainstream appeal, whose clips dominate social feeds, whose games draw eyes that never tuned in before, now she's the problem? The same people who once criticized the league for being underappreciated are now throwing shade at the reason it's finally gaining traction. That contradiction says a lot. It reveals how some people would rather be right in obscurity than adapt to success that doesn't look the way they wanted it to. There's another layer to this, one that's been lingering in the background of the conversation: race. Some of the criticism stems from the idea that Clark's status as a white player gives her an unfair media boost over black players who've been consistently overlooked, underpromoted, and undervalued by sponsors. That's not a conspiracy. That's a legitimate point. The WNBA has always had a complicated relationship with race and representation, especially in how its stars are marketed. But here's where things go off the rails. Attacking Clark personally doesn't fix that. She didn't create the system, and she's not out here taking shots at anyone. In fact, throughout all of this, Clark has handled the spotlight with a level of grace and respect that deserves way more credit. She's never disrespected her opponents, never thrown shade at the league, never once acted entitled to the attention she's received. She's played the game, elevated her team, and stayed professional through a storm of criticism. If there's a problem with how the league promotes players of color, that's a valid fight. But tearing down the player who's currently drawing attention to the league, arguably for the first time at this level, only creates division. And division is exactly what this league can't afford right now. It's not just about Clark. It's about what she represents, mainstream relevance. And for a league that's been financially fragile for decades, relevance is survival. Sponsors don't care about moral high ground. They care about audience size. They care about brand value. And right now, Clark is bringing both in massive quantities. So when critics go live and rip her apart in front of the fans she helped bring in, they're not just attacking a player. They're attacking the growth of the league itself. What's even more troubling is the timing. This isn't happening during the off-season low. It's happening during active league negotiations, sponsorship deals, labor talks, strategic planning, all of which could shape the next era of the WNBA. Undermining the league's biggest star in the middle of that? That's not just petty, it's reckless. The last thing the WNBA needs right now is internal dysfunction going public. And yet, that's exactly what this playback panel served up. A dose of resentment. Packaged as commentary. Deliver at the worst possible time. This league should be working overtime to keep the momentum going. And that means lifting up all its stars, not tearing down the one who's currently expanding the audience. There are so many talented black athletes in this league who deserve more coverage, more interviews, more campaigns. But their stories won't be heard louder by trying to silence Clark's. You don't fix inequity by subtracting from someone else's success. You fix it by investing in everyone, by telling better stories, by promoting more players, by giving more voices a platform. And the truth is, the league finally has the audience to do that now, thanks in large part to Clark's rise. Instead of being territorial about attention, this is the moment to leverage it. Use the new eyeballs to show off the rest of the league's incredible talent. Expand the narrative. Get creative. Build off the momentum, not destroy it from the inside. Because here's the bottom line. Personal attacks don't lead to progress. And media personalities who turn their platforms into battlegrounds aren't helping. They're creating a hostile environment in a league that's finally getting the recognition it deserves. Clark's stats speak for themselves. Rookie season, over 19 points per game, more than 8 assists, record-breaking performances, and she did it under intense scrutiny. Every misstep magnified, every move watched, and still, she showed up, played hard, and respected the game. That's more than some of these critics can say. This isn't about silencing criticism. Criticism is part of sports. But there's a difference between critical analysis and character assassination. One pushes the league forward. The other drags it back. And right now, the league doesn't have time for backward steps. It's climbing towards something bigger. Financial sustainability, cultural relevance, mainstream momentum. That climb gets harder when the internal message becomes some players are too successful for their own good. If this continues, if the league allows its stars to be publicly attacked without pushback, it sends a clear signal to new fans, brands, and athletes watching from the sidelines. This is not a league united. And unity is what it needs most. So where does this leave us? The media has a choice. They can use their platforms to elevate all players, to tell the deeper, more nuanced stories that matter. Or they can stay stuck in the cycle of bitterness and division. The league has a choice too. It can continue ignoring these fractures, or it can start calling them out, setting a higher standard for discourse. And fans? They can speak with their attention. They already have. In fact, the numbers don't lie. People are showing up. People are engaged. Now the question is whether the league will honor that attention or waste it. If you're watching all of this unfold and wondering where things go next, keep watching. The future of this league depends on whether it can grow without self-sabotage. If this breakdown made you think, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear the real story, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this kind of public division helps or hurts the league? If you're here for facts and not the noise, subscribe. We're just getting started. There's no question about it now. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's a fault line in a deep fracture that's been running under the WNBA for years. What that playback stream did was expose everything that's been simmering beneath the surface. Race, resentment, legacy, attention, and who gets to represent success in this league. The fact that the most successful season in WNBA history, record-breaking in ticket sales, viewership, jersey sales, and mainstream media presence, is being undermined by some of its own insiders is not just petty. It's dangerous. And no one's saying the racial dynamics in the league aren't real. They are. No one's denying that black players have been historically underpromoted, underpaid, and underappreciated. That's a fact. But this controversy isn't about denying any of that. It's about the response to it. Because tearing down Clark personally doesn't solve those problems. In fact, it does the opposite. It fuels more division, distracts from the real issues, and potentially drives away the very audience that the league desperately needs to sustain growth. The comments made on playback were more than just casual criticism. They were laced with contempt. They mocked her fan base, dismissed her skills, belittled her contributions. And all this while Clark has done nothing but show up, compete, and handle herself with maturity and grace in one of the most high-pressure rookie seasons the league has ever seen. Let's get honest here. The WNBA hasn't been in the national conversation like this in decades. In fact, it's never been in the spotlight like this, period. And the data proves that Clark's presence is a massive reason why. Her game sell out. Her jersey is flying off the shelves. Her name trends every other night. ESPN segments, Twitter debates, YouTube views, live streams. Everywhere you look, she's part of the conversation. And now, that momentum is at risk. Not because of injuries, not because of poor performance, but because certain voices inside the ecosystem would rather burn it down than share the stage. The hypocrisy is glaring. For years, these same critics begged for more fans, more exposure, more money. And now that it's here, now that the league finally has a player who's drawing mainstream attention, they act like it's a threat? What does that say about the real motive? Because this isn't just about Clark. It's about control. Who gets to shape the narrative? Who gets to be the face? And who gets to decide what success is allowed to look like? And right now, there's a loud, bitter minority try to drag the league back to when it was smaller, quieter, and frankly, ignored. It's a mindset stuck in the past, terrified of change, even when that change is exactly what the league has needed. Let's be clear. It's absolutely valid to want more coverage and support for the incredible black athletes in the WNBA. That should be happening. That must be happening. Players like Aya Wilson, Eriko Gunbowl, and Nafiza Collier have every right to share the spotlight. But that doesn't mean you dim Clark's light to make it happen. That's not progress. That's sabotage. This isn't zero-sum. It can be both. You can amplify black stars and still acknowledge Clark's impact. The two don't cancel each other out. They can support each other. But not when media voices decide to use Clark as the scapegoat for everything that's wrong with league visibility. What happened on that playback stream wasn't about holding the league accountable. It was about tearing down the person who's currently putting it on the map. That's not critique. That's pettiness. And the worst part? The timing. All of this is happening during a critical moment for the WNBA. Negotiations are ongoing. CBA talks are looming. Sponsorship deals are being locked in or reconsidered. And in the middle of that, the most marketable player the league has had in years is being slammed publicly by people inside the tent. If you're a brand watching this from the outside, what message does that send? That the league eats its own when someone gets too popular? That attention is a liability? That success comes with a target on your back? That's not a healthy environment. That's a fractured one. And it makes investing in the league feel risky, not exciting. Which is tragic. Because the entire point of having someone like Clark in the league is to lift everyone. Her presence brings in new fans who then discover the entire league. She's the entry point, the hook. But you don't keep people engaged by watching your most visible player get dragged every time she logs in. That kind of internal dysfunction hurts everyone. It chases away potential fans. It sours new viewers. It turns off casual supporters who might have stuck around. And worst of all, it tells young girls watching that there's no safe path to success in this league. Because even if you're respectful, humble, and wildly talented, you'll still be treated like a problem if you get too popular. And let's talk about the double standard. Clark isn't out here trash-talking opponents or calling out the media. She hasn't responded with negativity. She hasn't clapped back. She hasn't demanded special treatment. Meanwhile, grown adults with platforms are mocking her in real time, on video, for simply doing what she was drafted to do: grow the game. Where's the outrage about that? Where's the energy for protecting the players who are actually bringing attention to the league? Where's the accountability for so-called commentators who seem more interested in gatekeeping than growing? It's exhausting to watch, because this could have been the league's moment. Instead of using Clark's rise to build an inclusive marketing strategy that promotes players across all backgrounds, we're watching an opportunity get buried under bitterness. The league has to make a decision, and soon. Does it want to be a united front moving forward into mainstream? Or does it want to stay fractured, held hostage by old-school resentment and personal agendas? There's a path forward, but it starts with elevating everyone. That means investing in the black stars who've carried this league for decades, giving them more media opportunities, highlighting their stories, backing up their talent with real promotion. But it also means protecting and supporting the new faces, bringing in fresh audiences, even if they don't look like the old guard. You don't fix inequality by adding more division. You fix it by expanding the table, creating more seats, telling more stories, and ensuring that every player, no matter their background, is promoted, protected, and appreciated when they contribute to the growth of the league. What happened to Caitlin Clark on that stream wasn't just unfair. It was self-defeating. It was a kind of moment that, if left unchecked, could send the WNBA backward just when it was finally building momentum. So if you care about this league, you should care about all the players who are helping it rise, including the one currently drawing the most eyes. Because every time the league tears itself apart from the inside, it hands ammunition to the critics who say women's basketball isn't ready for the big stage. But we know it is. It just needs to stop fighting itself long enough to realize it. Here's the reality the WNBA has to confront: loud, uncomfortable, and unavoidable. You cannot build a future while simultaneously tearing down the foundation as it's being laid. Caitlin Clark is that foundation right now, whether people want to admit it or not. And the playback stream, with its on-camera jabs and smirking takedowns, wasn't just a bad look. It was a public display of self-sabotage. Clark has helped push the league into mainstream conversation at a level it has never touched before, and somehow that's being treated as controversial instead of celebrated. The energy around her isn't just hype, it's measurable. Her games are selling out arenas. Her highlights are topping social feeds. She's not being handed attention. She's earning it. Yet there's a faction of people who seem more concerned about how much she's being praised than what it means for the league as a whole. This isn't criticism born from concern. It's criticism born from territory. It's the kind of bitter reaction you get when someone new shows up and changes the pace, the audience, the money. Some folks like the league small. They liked it niche. They like the control. But you don't grow by clinging to obscurity. You grow by meeting the moment. And right now, that moment is named Caitlin Clark. What's striking is how her presence has exposed just how unprepared some parts of the league and the media surrounding it really are for mainstream attention. Growth was the goal, right? Well, here it is. Bright lights, big sponsors, new fans, new expectations. But suddenly, now that it's real, some people are acting like they'd rather go back to empty arenas and underreported box scores. The playback panel didn't just critique Clark's game. They attacked her character, her fans, her very presence. And they did it with a smugness that suggested they felt righteous about it. But the optics were awful. What they ended up showing the world was a fractured league that can't even support its own success without turning it into a culture war. And it's exhausting to witness. Clark hasn't lashed out. She hasn't engaged in beef. She hasn't taken the bait. She's shown up, played her game, lifted her team, and brought a flood of attention to a sport that has deserved more for years. So why is she being vilified? Because some people see her visibility as a threat instead of a vehicle. And let's be honest, this isn't just about Clark. It's about what she represents. A turning point, a shift in audience. A player who, yes, benefits from her background, but also brings undeniable skill, court vision, and charisma. Her stats don't lie. Her impact doesn't either. But instead of using her rise as a launching pad to lift everyone, some are choosing to pull her down and stall the league's own momentum in the process. That's short-sighted. It's counterproductive. And worst of all, it's not what fans want. The fans who are showing up in droves to watch her play, they're not anti-WNBA. They're new to the WNBA. And instead of being welcomed, they're being told they're part of the problem. That's not just bad strategy. That's alienating the very audience the league has been trying to reach for decades. This isn't a time for petty infighting. This is a time to expand the stage, to take all of this new attention and use it to promote more stars, tell more stories, and build a stronger, more unified brand. That's how you create staying power, not by shaming success or gatekeeping growth. There's still time to turn this around, but it starts with choice. Does the WNBA want to build on its biggest moment ever? Or does it want to fracture from within over who gets credit for it? Because one thing is clear, Caitlin Clark's rise is happening. The numbers are already in. The cameras are already rolling. And every internal fight, every offhand comment, every public slight isn't just a bad look. It's a missed opportunity. So if the goal is to grow, it's time to stop pretending that celebrating one player means erasing another. It doesn't. It never has. There's room for more than one star, more than one face, more than one story. The league just has to want to tell them all. If you've been shaking your head at how all of this has gone down, hit the like button. Drop a comment. Do you think the media is doing more harm than good right now? And if you want more of these brutally honest deep dives into the mess behind the headlines, hit subscribe. Because the story's not over, and we're watching it unfold in real time.